Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me on this webinar. I'm excited to team up with Lucy Newton on talking about head halters and providing some help. And so I am coming from head halters from a different perspective. So I am a physical therapist by trade. I actually have been working with animals for a little over 25 years. And when I did work with humans, that sounds so funny, I did a lot of work with headaches, suboccipital pain, hyoid, which is located up here, and TMJ issues. And I suffer from chronic headaches myself, as well as TMJ issues. So I'm always paying special attention to the dog's head, their head carriage, how our different training tools impact the cervical area or the neck, and everything that goes on with that. So when I look at head halters, yes, it's a training tool, but I also look at them for their ramifications on the dog's body. So I definitely think they are appropriate with some dogs, not appropriate with others, and I'll discuss that. And if you are using a head halter, there are definitely things that you can do to work with the dog to offset some of the impacts that the head halters have on the dog's body. And as we all know, definitely the first goal, and I'll say this quite a few times, is establishing a relationship with your dog. So I look at a head halter should be a temporary training tool or used with another training tool. So I do get concerned when I see a senior dog or a dog that has had a head halter all their life. And to me, that's not great training. And again, I am not a dog trainer. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I have 3 dogs of my own. 2 walk great on a leash. The other one doesn't. So I definitely understand everything about trying to walk with a dog, trying to get them to not pull and to behave. In addition, I treat many dogs throughout the week, and I often look at the dog paired with the human end of the leash. And certainly, just the other day, I had a wild German Shepherd come in, and the owners were in their late 70s having difficulty controlling the dog and walking. So definitely the dog needs training, but I don't want those people to fall on their face, break a hip, or do something. So I completely understand everything that we need to look at. So as we start with that. So as we look at head halters, and so gentle leaders, halties, snoot loop, lots of different terminology for these, for these things. And I have skulls all over my office at home and my work office, which often concerns my children. I get some weird looks from the UPS man. I order from, they come in a big box labeled bones, skulls and bones. But it helps me look at the pressure of where the head halters are putting any kind of pressure as well on the nose, the suboccipital area, and the TMJ. For those of you not familiar with the TMJ, this is the temporal mandibular joint or the jaw. So some of you may have TMJ issues if you're grinding or popping or anything like that. So the mechanism, the head halter or any similar products are going to dissuade the dog from pulling on the lead by transferring the pressure of his or her efforts to the back of the neck. And this, if you look at the picture, is where the yellow strap is. This is a black gentle leader, and I put some yellow vet wrap on it. And so the pressure on the nose loop communicates, and we have a tucked in posture. So when we look at that, essentially the dog is pulling back, and I'm going to have you do this a couple times during my talk. Just tuck your chin in, and you could feel some pressure in the back of your head. And when we look at this, so this area, I'm going to move me here for you. This is looking at the base of the skull, right where the cervical spine starts. So when there's this displaced pressure, the dog's instinctive resistance to these redirected pressures causes the dog to stop pulling and relieve the pressure at the back of the head and walk and relax and walk nicely. But it's the pressure on the back of the head that starts the dog moving. So again, if you were walking along and you got a pull and all of a sudden your head is tucked back, some of you may feel some of that stress on that suboccipital area, or where we commonly have headaches. If you have tension headaches, those of you that work at a desk often may start to feel that in that region. And when we look at the dog's sensory system and how sensitive the nose is, and so there are a lot of blood, lots of blood supply. I was going to say lots of arteries or blood supply to the nose, as we can see by these diagrams. The second diagram is just looking at it from up onto the upper part of the jaw, so inside of the mouth. And we can see that there's a lot of blood flow. There's also a lot of sensory input there as well. And here's just another diagram that shows this, and I'll move me up here. So if we take a look at this, all of the blood flow from both the cervical area and down the nose. So, and in addition, there's numerous nerve endings on the base of the cervical and the neck region. And this is what makes the head halter work, but it also makes it potentially harmful to the dog. So the nose and the suboccipital area are one of the most sensitive areas in the dog's body. So just keep this in mind. You know, the dogs are doing all of this sniffing, and there's so much that goes into the top of the nose, the whole head. So their vision, all of that sort of stuff. So important to keep this in mind. And as I mentioned, there's a significant amount of torque on the neck. So again, if you can, try to tuck your chin in. So keep your arms relaxed and then tuck that chin in. And where do you feel some of the pressure? And you can exaggerate by having your neck out and then tuck your chin in. And try that a few times. And again, just feel the back of the neck. You may want to put your hands here and try it. And you can feel that area tighten up. And if you do this 3 or 4 times, you can start to feel that tension there. Now we're doing it really slowly. If you can imagine that a dog is doing it more, or quickly. So if they jerk after a squirrel or they're pulling, there's a lot of tension there. So if you do it quickly, you may start to feel some tension in the front of your shoulders as well as the back of your shoulders. And this is going to transfer down the dog's same area as well as their back. So something to keep in mind, especially if your dog has a history of neck issues, back issues, shoulder issues. Is this the right tool, or should you be using this with another tool? And again, just to give you an example, this is the suboccipital area that I'm rubbing on this dog. So it's commonly called the headache area in people. And we definitely see headaches in dogs. As I'm touching this area, we can see that she yawns. And it's also can create a lot of release, can create a lot of stress also. Dogs that have discomfort in the suboccipital area or headache area may hold their head funny. They may squint their eyes because all of this is related. They may have trouble swallowing. They may pant excessively. So, just keep this in mind with your dog's setup and everything that we're doing with that. So one of the things that I was thinking about with halters or gentle leaders, and there are definitely quite a few on the market, but right now most of us are wearing masks at some point throughout the day, as we're still in the middle of this pandemic. And I've definitely noticed, and I get irritated, if I have a mask on that doesn't properly fit, it's going to obstruct my vision. So I get annoyed, and I find myself okay with it for a few minutes, but then if I'm busy, if I'm running around, I start to get annoyed because I can't see completely. If I have glasses on, it makes it a little bit worse. So think about this with any kind of head halter, and one you choose or one that you have, and does it impact the dog's vision at all? Because the way that it rests, is it impacting the dog's sight? And just like us, we're always going to do what we have to do to see. Dogs are going to do the same thing. So if the mask is occluding their vision lower, they're going to make some adjustments. And this again is going to cause some deviations in the suboccipital area as well as that TMJ area. So think about that. And how does that fit? Can the dog see clearly down its nose? Can it also see well peripherally or on the sides? So definitely something to think about with the position. And again, think about us with the masks. So good, how are we, lining up with everything? And as I mentioned, this is a training tool. So as always, we're looking for that mutual, respectable relationship between our dogs and ourselves. And I definitely look at this as a temporary phase and not permanent, but a lot of times it is used in conjunction with another training tool. So a harness, especially dogs that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of exceptions. So I don't want you to go away from this saying, head halters are bad, because as Lucy talks about, they're definitely not. They have a place, but we just have to factor in that there's no replacement for training. And, certainly we're always looking for that respectable relationship with our dog, or dogs. So one of the things also that I had noticed while putting head halters on dogs, or like I said, a lot of dogs come into the clinic and with head halters, and is the change in head and body position. So with the initial photo, I'm having the dog do some core work. The forelimbs are up higher than the hind limbs, and we're working on some hind limb strength as well as some core strength. So I wanted to see what this dog would look like if I put a head halter on. And he has worn one many times before. And as we can see, as soon as the head halter's on, the body position changes. So the head drops, and the cervical spine drops also. We also see that his tail drops a bit as well. So changing his biomechanics. And then as I've been working with more and more dogs, the other thing I've seen is some balance issues. So balance is crucial for dogs of all ages, especially our seniors, our puppies, our dogs with ligamentous issues such as hip dysplasia, cruciate disease, all of that sort of stuff. So keep that in mind as well. So, and it has made me think, normally I don't do any balance work with any training tools on. But dogs that are being trained with a head halter, I have been starting to do balance work with it on. So because again, we have a lowering of the head, it's changing things with the body. So a couple ways to look at this. If it's altering the balance, good versus bad. But also if the dog needs to be in a head halter, work with the dog in this, in the training tool. So, and this is a very fit dog, and he definitely struggled with his balance, especially with the hind end, as soon as we turned it, put the head halter on. And if you need to use a harness, so obviously this is put on wrong. I often laugh at harnesses. So maybe we'll see 30 dogs in our office, all of us during the day. And I would probably say 15 of them have different harnesses. And they're definitely, some of them, a bit difficult to figure out how to put on and all of that sort of stuff. So as I mentioned, if you need to use a harness, we want to make sure it properly fits. So this is not proper. Use another training tool. So don't rely 100% on that, or use it temporarily. So you're going to use this, you're going to train the dog. There is never going to be any substitute for training. Stretch appropriately and strengthen appropriately, which I'm going to talk about. So again, you have to use a head halter, no problem. Let's do some things to sort of combat then the stress that's potentially placed on the neck, that suboccipital area, and the hyoid. And then we want to check skin integrity. So this is definitely, a drastic measure of an abuse of a head halter, I would call it. But in the same statement, we want to make sure the hair growth is not diminished in the area. The skin is not wearing down. There's no blistering. So important to take a look at that. Even if you only have it on for an hour, think about if you wear a pair of shoes that don't fit properly. You can get a blister or uneven wear on your feet within 10 minutes. So it's very important to make sure it is fitting properly. Dogs that are more sensitive may need some extra padding there. They may need a different type of harness. So there's quite a few different head halters out there. And I know Lucy uses at least 3 different ones. So she allows the dog to choose, what she needs. So important to take a look at that. So stretching. And this is a great stretch to do if your dog is doing a lot of healing, a lot of obedience work as well. But we want to stretch into neck flexion. So that will be a downward motion. When the dog looks up, it is extension. When they look down, it is flexion. So I like to use either a piece of cheese or something that the dog can work on for a bit and have them look down. So that looking down motion is going to stretch the back of the neck as well as a little bit between the shoulder blades. Ideally, you should hold for up to 15 seconds. Repeat up to 3 times after collar use. So again, this will relieve a lot of that stress, a lot of that pressure. For those of you that do a lot of healing with your work, with your dog, I highly recommend doing this before and after healing as well. Some other things, we want to stretch the neck side to side. So this will alleviate some of the stress on the sides of the neck. So we'll ask the dog to stretch to the left, and again, using a cookie, spoonful of peanut butter, anything like that. Hold for 15 seconds, do the other side as well, and repeat 3 times on each side. This also gives you a nice opportunity to see if your dog has more flexibility going to one side over the other. So I like to ask owners to just pay attention to this. Can they move one side more than the other? And most dogs normally do. Just like us, we tend to be more flexible going in one direction than the other. But this is great to work on that cervical motion, and again, just help with some of the ramifications of the head halter. The other one stretch that we'll do is stretching out the shoulder or the forelimb. So we'll want to stretch the shoulder forward. And if you notice in this picture, I am stretching at the elbow and I am moving the shoulder forward. A common mistake is people pull at the wrist or the toes. So we want to be as close as possible to the shoulder. And we want to, I always say I'm going to scoop the elbow like an ice cream scoop, and you're going to scoop it forward. So we'll stretch forward and almost like an extension of your own arm. And this is best done after a few minutes of activity. So if you've been working with a head halter and you've been moving with a dog, fantastic. Then go ahead and stretch them forward. Hold up to 15 seconds. And what I like to do is stand on one side, do the opposite, repeat the stretch 3 times, and then move on to the other side. And 15 seconds should be a nice slow 15. Work with it and then move over. And again, this is a great stretch to do with your active dogs that are doing a lot of work as well. But this just helps relieve some of the tension in the shoulders that the head halter may be causing. And then another one, which is kind of funny, you can see some videos, is licking peanut butter off the dog's nose. And this will help stretch out the tongue, which is attached to the hyoid, a bone in the throat, and it'll help alleviate some of the stress here. It also helps take some pressure off the TMJ area. So a nice fun activity. Most dogs do not mind doing this at all. So as they're doing this, the licking motion, the hyoid will drop, they'll get a stretch in the front of the neck, and they'll also get a little bit of stretch in that suboccipital area. So a great stretch to do, and recommend maybe twice a day. And of course, keep your other dogs away from the dog that you're doing this with at home because of the peanut butter and that sort of stuff. If the dog can't have peanut butter, cream cheese works, liverwurst, or something similar of a texture. And as you can see in the videos, we just want to put it on the top of the dog's nose and let them lick away. Some get it off in a few seconds, others take a little bit longer. So definitely I had mentioned some breeds and some conditions we do not want to use a head halter on. And this skull is the skull of a bulldog, so we can see how short the snout is on the dog or the nose. So brachiocephalic, or these shorter nosed dogs like your bulldogs, your French bulldogs, your puggles, there's not a lot of surface area there. So that's one reason, but also these dogs have a lot of trouble breathing to begin with. So working with, adding on that sort of training tool may stress their breathing even more. So I don't recommend that. Sight hounds have the opposite. They have a very long nose. So they have this, it's called dolichocephalic. They're taking in lots of smells as they're moving along. And for that reason, because this area is so narrow and so long, and the arterial flow or the blood flow and the nerve endings are, maybe a little bit more exaggerated, I don't like the head halters with the sight hounds. So again, looking at different training tools for them. Dogs that have laryngeal paralysis or LARPAR, I will also not like the head halter. I don't like anything on their throat, but something also that's not going to be pulling in. So with the LARPAR, there's the dogs can become short of breath. They do a lot of panting. Sometimes we don't know if we're causing pain or discomfort because they're panting so much, but I like to stay away from that as well. Generalized weakness. Again, if the dog doesn't have a lot of strength, if it's an older dog, if they have generalized geriatric onset laryngeal paralysis, this is a whole systemic weakness. I like to stay away from head halters as well. Because the dogs are geriatric, hopefully they're not pulling as much and they've learned somewhat in their life, sometimes not. Cervical disc disease. So the same reason we were talking about that suboccipital area and the stress on the neck. So any kind of disc disease, and I don't have them wear collars as well. I don't want stress put on their neck. And then wobbler's disease or cervical instability. We don't know what is going to stress the instability. Pulling back creates a shearing motion on the cervical spine. So that will definitely aggravate the condition. And, again, as I mentioned, alternatives, an additional training tool so we're not relying on this all of the time. A properly fitted back harness, and I'll mention front clip harnesses just for 1 second. This is more on head halters. And then, of course, training, as I had mentioned. Front clip harnesses, and I apologize that, I don't know what happened to my thing there. This can cause skeletal damage. Front clip harnesses are going to cause the whole rib cage and the shoulder carriage to move. So front clip harnesses I don't love, and we can talk about in questions some alternatives. And then I am sure this is going to get a lot of questions. And as I said, there's no substitute for training. And a halter is a tool that can be used properly. But we need to think about that impact of the tool, see, what else we could do, how we can offset it. As I mentioned, if you do need to use this tool, definitely work on the flexibility. Always be in tune with your dog, understand if they're in pain or discomfort or if they don't like anything. And we'll definitely take questions, but also my email is deb@wizardofpaws.net, and I'm always happy to answer any questions. So thank you so much.